each round. They don't feel the need to add any new words or any new grammar into the third performance, so they can really focus more on fluency the third time. And there are a number of studies that have found that this has been useful in improving oral fluency. However, in our kind of context here, particularly with Japanese EFL students, we really found that 4 minutes is a long time for them to be speaking continuously, and many of them struggle to be able to talk for that amount of time. So one possible solution, kind of suggested by Tom here, was that how about if we flip it and we go from 2 to 3 to 4? The idea being that the pressure is reduced from 4 to 2 minutes. They can increase their confidence and hopefully speak for 4 minutes in the final time. And that was the idea that we kind of were interested in. We've got 3 research questions that we were looking at. So does fluency training impact ratings on fluency? Which design was more effective, the 4-3-2 or the 2-3-4? And the main focus of today's presentation is what are participants' impressions of the treatment through a questionnaire that we did. So I'll hand you over to Tom.
Thank you very much. So you can see all the sample demographics here. We had 70 students who completed all of the measures correctly, and you can see their TOEIC levels and age ranges there. As often happens in these courses, most of the students were female, as you can expect. So we mentioned in the research question ratings of fluency. So we used the rating scale from the literature developed by Doe, and it's been shown to be an effective way for, as it said in the original paper, expert raters to listen to audio samples of speech and rate them for fluency. So you can see it's a 5-point scale going from so halting and fragmentary that you can't have a conversation right up to totally fluent, very few hesitations, native like. Okay, so this is what we use to rate the samples. And you can see here, there's a lot of information here, but basically the procedures that we went through, the schedule, right, for the research. So we selected some IELTS speaking prompts because they're designed to allow a wide range of speakers to showcase their abilities, right? So we thought they might be appropriate. And you can see the schedule we did here. In the first week, we had a practice with this topic here, and then you can see we did a treatment where we practiced the technique over 5 weeks. Now, if you noticed here in the pre-test and post-test sections, you've got these B and A listed here. So those refer to the different treatment groups, whether they did the 2-3-4 or the 4-3-2, right? So you can see here at the top, strand 1, 2, 3, and 4. They alternate between the condition of the treatment and the prompt that we started them with. That's what the A and the B refer to in there as well. So they alternated, right? That was to reduce the impact of the difficulty of any particular prompt on it, right? So make our results more reliable.
I didn't quite follow the difference between A, B, and BA.
So A, that's the order, pre-test and post-test, and they're just different prompts.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Yep. So what did we do? Well, we, as Mike mentioned, we gave the students a survey to get their impressions at the same time as we as we distributed the ethical consent form, and then we coded that afterwards. As for the quantitative data, what we did was we used a platform called Zengengo to collect audio recordings from them. So, and then we had 70 participants, and so in the end we had 140 paired recordings. Right?
So what is what's it called?
Zengengo. If you'd like to see, there's a lot of extra material at the end of the presentation, and there's we didn't have time to fit in here, but it's going to be in there. So we are the expert raters in this scenario. That's a term of art from the literature, not aggrandizing ourselves. And then we did a few different things to ensure that our analysis was a bit more reliable. One of them was pseudonymization, so we called the files P01, P02, so we could identify that particular student. And also, rather than calling the files that we saw pre-test and post-test, so we would have that kind of bias of two raters, right, rating the same file right, each time. And then we treated them in a consistent way. So if the raters got the same score, we kept the score. If they were one stage different, we averaged them out. And then if they were 2 stages or more different, then we got a third rater to come in and resolve these differences. And we also randomized the assignment to promote equality in terms of, certain students could only speak for a very short time, others could speak for a very long time. So we wanted to evaluate them on a consistent amount of time. So we selected, 2 minutes, how fluently could they speak within that time bracket. That was for reasons of practicality as well. So I think that's the end of my section. So now I'm going to hand off to Lydia to talk about the results.
Yeah. So first I'll go through the quantitative results. So in general, our data was ordinal, ranking from 1 through 5 and not parametrically distributed. So the best way to deal with this we felt was non-parametric tests. So for independent samples tests, we use the Mann-Whitney-U test, and for paired samples, we use the Wilkins signed rank test. And so our first research question was, regardless of whether they're doing 2-3-4 or 4-3-2, does this practice improve their fluency over time? And our results are really encouraging. So the pre-test median was 3, and the post-test median was 3.5. And the Wilkins test showed a significant difference between those. So over the 7 or 8 weeks that they did our training, they also improved over time. Now they were also, taking their regular English classes and doing whatever independent study they were doing on their own. So we can't definitively say that this practice was a thing that improved it. But it is pretty encouraging that even over a relatively short treatment period, we did see an increase in fluency. Our second research question, the most important one, was comparing the 2-3-4 and 4-3-2 difference. And there were some differences between the groups to start with. So at both the time of the pre-test and the post-test, the 2-3-4 group ended up just being significantly better due to just random distribution of who ended up in which class. But when you compare the amount of growth, how much the two different groups improved over time, there was no significant difference between the two groups. So the 2-3-4 group saw a mean increase of 0.15 on that 5-point scale, and the 4-3-2 group saw a mean increase of 0.29 on that 5-point scale. But yeah, it's not significant. When you look at the violin graphs here, there's a ton of overlap between them. So whether they're doing 2-3-4 to practice or doing 4-3-2 to practice doesn't seem to make much of a difference. It kind of suggests that time on task is more important than that specific decreasing the time pressure.
But there was no significant difference.
There was no significant difference between 2-3-4 and 4-3-2.
But you feel that the decreasing time on pressure is better?
No.
Oh, you don't?
Do not. Yeah, after having done this, no, don't. Personally, I'm not going to bother with the decrease in time pressure after this. Okay, and so in terms of their subjective experiences of the treatment overall, this is our third research question, was what were the participants' impressions of it? The students themselves really felt that this helped them improve. So the blue here indicates the agreement or somewhat agree or strongly agreed with whether they felt that this kind of practice activity improved their fluency, and 91% of them felt they improved, because overall the whole group.
This is about the increasing time.
No, this is about everybody all together just doing the practice in class.
2-3-4 out of 4.
Yes, all together. Doing a statistical analysis, comparing their results here, there was no difference between 2-3-4 and 4-3-2 again. And yeah, looking at their comments about this, a lot of them seem to mention things like practicing a lot and becoming more familiar with the task really seemed to be what helped them improve. When it comes to time limits, there weren't that very many comments that specifically mentioned the time limits. But some people in the 2-3-4 group mentioned that trying to speak for a longer period of time each time was really encouraging for them. Like this one said, I was able to speak well consciously, trying to speak for longer periods of time. That was somebody from the 2-3-4 group. Whereas one of the people who disagreed, one of the few people in this red segment over here, the reason that they felt they didn't improve was because the hurdle is set high from the start, I don't get the feeling that I have improved my ability. So for this person, they found the 4-3-2 treatment to be rather discouraging. But they liked it for the most part.
Yes, so the majority, 70%, enjoyed it. This is as reported by the qualitative data and the surveys. And so as you can see here, okay, agree, 37.8%, and somewhat agree, 31%. So and then strongly agree is 3.3. So the vast majority enjoyed this activity. And once we dig into it, some of the things that they talked about, talking and speaking with classmates, they really liked conveying their ideas. They really want to communicate, they really want to share their ideas, and also expressing their own opinion, and then hearing from the other classmates what they have to say, and that's really fun for them, so they really enjoyed that part of it. Some conveying their own thoughts, and so that's kind of the theme. There was some nervousness and anxiety, maybe that led to some not enjoying it. It was a little bit too difficult, maybe high above their level, and so some of the common comments that we had is I learned a lot, and I felt happy to talk with my classmates. So communication is the key thing here. Okay, and then, but there are some difficulty issues.
Okay, so in contrast to the enjoyment aspect and improvement, many of the students really found this a very challenging task. See, over 95% of them basically disagreed with this statement that the task was easy for them. Almost none of the students found that it was an easy task, and it probably, as to be expected, is a very challenging task to do. And some of the factors behind that, the main one was proficiency level. So students found they just didn't have the vocabulary or they're able to form the grammatical sentences that they needed to perform the task. Secondly, an issue with the topics as well. They felt that they needed to think more deeply about those topics, or they just didn't have enough things to say over that period of time of 4 minutes. And also time pressure as well. Students only had a limited amount of time. I don't remember how
Right. Yeah.
It was 5 minutes preparation time, so many of them felt this wasn't enough time to prepare for a formal talk. But I mean, that is intentional. If you give them too much time, they're going to rely on their notes more than on their oral skills. So there's a balance to be drawn with that issue. Okay. So, yeah, and some comments about the difficulty, again, coming up with things on the fly. 2 minutes was okay, but 4 minutes, even in Japanese, was a challenging amount of time. And again, very similar comments, kind of thinking on the spot, it was very difficult. All right, so I'll pass you on to Tom.
Right, so again, perhaps you can anticipate this. A lot of them located their difficulty in lacking confidence. So most of them felt that they didn't feel confident in their English before. You might have noticed this with your students anyway. Even when you are watching from the outside and you see them improving, they don't feel it themselves, right? They kind of doubt themselves a little bit. And as Mike mentioned, a lot of this comes from lack of vocabulary, right? Word finding difficulties, or in their comments when they mentioned hesitation, they linked it to vocabulary finding. So that seems to be like a major theme that came out in the data that affected their confidence levels as well, right? Not so many of them mentioned nervous or anxiety affecting their confidence, which was interesting. So yes, hesitation. So even the times when they did make positive comments, they often framed them in a negative way as well, which speaks to their psychology a little bit, I think. But it's kind of useful for us as teachers to know you've just got to keep being encouraging, and then occasionally showing them that this is actually working, right? You're making an improvement, but it's an uphill battle, I think. So I'm handing over to our other discussion. Is it to Mike?
Okay. Sorry, back to the beginning of the research questions. Did fluency training have an impact on rating for fluency? I think from the results you saw already, yes, it did. So that sounds a little obvious by practicing and doing training that you improve at the skill. Okay, and then I think what our main research question is number 2 is, did 2-3-4 or 4-3-2 make a difference? And we found no, it's number 1, the practice that makes the difference. So that doesn't seem to matter. And number 3, what were the participants' opinion and impression? And overall, they liked it, but they found it challenging. Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight a few references. You can look at our original paper. Sorry.
No, I'm getting ready to ask a question.
Oh, okay. First is Maurice, the original one. You can still find it. It's a little bit hard to find, but you can still find it. Who came up with this activity. The second is Nation way back in the 80s, and probably after that, he's promoted this activity, which is probably why a lot of us know about it. And I'd really like to say thank you to Tim Do. I don't know if he's at the conference, but he's Temple Japan's, his PhD thesis was this one. And he did a really good job, very in-depth. And Zengengo, who are actually here, you were asking a question. Paul Raines, probably here. He's over down there.
At the end of the corridor.
Yeah, so it has lots of tools, but we used the voice recording tool, and it was super convenient.
So that's one of my first questions.
Yes.
You weren't giving out students little voice recorders.
No.
I don't know how to sing English.
Did you want to?
Yeah. So if you want to see more detail on this stuff, our slides are there. So if you want to check it out later, you open that QR code, you can get access to the extra material and our paper later on.
Would it be possible to send you an email and get the
Yeah, that also works. Okay. So people had a
Basically, how it works is we show a QR code in class. The students use their own smartphones to go to that site, and it shows up a little recording thing. They press the recording button, they record themselves, and then it automatically gets.
So they're talking like that.
Yeah, they're just talking to their smartphones.
We had this,
So
all
it's
this
not-
extra material at the
It's
end.
not a paired interaction.
If you want to see,
practice
you can open up an example of it right here.
Brilliant.
So this is exactly like what we did here. So you can
I was
see.
thinking, I was imagining listening to you, but it was data collected in a noisy classroom.
No. I mean, they were all speaking at the same time. So in that sense, it was noisy, but like we had them see.
But it wasn't like two just a conversation.
No.
The practice activities were, so we had pre-test just to the phone.
Yeah.
6 weeks of practice talking to partners,
That's right.
and then the post-test just to the phone.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting result. And I noticed that, I think, if I may ask a couple of questions.
Sure.
So there was Frank Burst, wasn't there? He came out with that idea of the expanding times possibly more effective.
Yeah,
Do your results possibly not support that?
not really.
No. It's just the repetition. Based on our results, it seems to be the repetition that was the key thing that had the impact. So both treatments were equally effective, in other words.
And I've got another question there, if I'm just jumping there. So I've used 432 in the past, but this idea that you have to start out speaking for 4 minutes, I find that is not very reliable or practical. And so what I ended up doing was taking a minute. So for example, the students write something and then they talk about it in class, for example. And in my approach, they got 60 seconds. Reducing to 45, reducing to 30, which is half, 2 is half of 4.
Yeah.
And so that was an approach that I took. But in your approach, did you go with the sort of a literal sort of 4 minutes down to 2 minutes?
Yes, yeah. And the reverse. So in the other students who do it literally 2 into 3 or 4.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if you mentioned it, so you're talking about going back and forth. Did the students have a preference just which they enjoyed more? Because from my experience, the 432, they just thought it was funny trying to say the same thing. And I don't know if I expanded it, they would have enjoyed it as much. It might have been as, if not more effective, but they just thought it was so funny trying to say the same thing.
Yeah. Comparing our Likert scale responses, the enjoyment was the same for both.
Okay.
So perceived improvement was the same, enjoyment was the same, but perceived difficulty, the ones in the 2, 3, 4 group thought it was a little bit easier than the ones in the 4, 3, 2 group.
Okay. Did you mention what the students' proficiency level was?
Yeah. So this is what we had access to before. Is the
So sort of intermediate.
yeah, most of the students were as part of when we have the intensive English program, PanSIG Green University, and they're set according to test level. One class of students was outside of that program.
Have you published this yet? It's really good work.
Yeah. So our paper was in the in-house Kyo journal for concept, so you can read it.
And is it downloadable?
It should be. Yeah, I think that later takes you to like the home page. There's a yeah. So you could download these slides if you like, and you could download the paper.
So where do I download it from? Fancy?
Oh, right here. Yeah, from the QR code. If you open it up.
Okay.
If you don't want to do it now, you could just take a picture of the screenshot.
Sorry, it's on my kid. It keeps going to the bottom.
Oh,
I apologize, everyone.
So, yeah,
Sorry about that.
I should have put them on opposite sides of the screen.
Oh, right.
right?
Well, it's good for learning. It's good for next time.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of interferes with each other.
Yeah.
It didn't seem to pick it up.
Does it?
Or you can take a picture of this whole screen and then like get it later, maybe. Yeah.
Or you could drop us one of us an email or
Yeah.
something, we can email you.
That would be great.
Send it.
My phone doesn't work there.
Anyone else have any questions?
You mentioned about topics they talk about. They're all unrelated. Could you give us some examples?
Yeah, so they were in this, we took them directly from the IELTS speaking section, part 2. So they were, we chose those because, you know, they're kind of designed to be open-ended. They allow people of a variety of different levels to respond in a way that's possible for them at that time in their development. So you can see the practice one was describe a book that you enjoyed reading because you had to think a lot. And then they were different between these kind of streams here as well.
And did they have to, for example, in the practice, the pre-practice, did they have to come up with their 4-minute there and then?
They were given 5 minutes to prep, and then yes, then we kind of trialed the recording procedure. Like, okay, get the phone, don't hold it too far away, bring it close, right, and do it. We collected them all, and we did a bit of troubleshooting then, and then we go, okay, now we've done the practice, let's do the pre-tests.
And so, for example, I mean, this is great research. For example, the replication of this kind of research might be whether you get a different outcome if you give 30 minutes to write about that initial topic.
Yeah. Or topic selection, like was more if we did some kind of pre-work, finding out what kind of topics they thought they could talk for longer on as well, and then designing the study around that.
And then, for example, in week 2, describe a hotel you know. I can imagine some students might not know any English.
Yes, some
The initial
complained.
reaction was, eh?
Yeah, some complained a lot about topics, but in the end, it didn't seem to matter.
No,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, the topic didn't seem to make a difference.
Yeah.
And some students complained that when 2, 3, 4, because we had it standardized. They were like, I could do so much better job if you just gave me a little time to kind of prepare in between. But I was like, sorry.
It says more about the kind of topics.
I think all the topics were hard because it was an IELTS, so it's quite an academic focused test. So, like personally, just this semester, I let them choose their own topic from. I very much will talk about your family. So if you personalise it more, I think they could probably talk more about that. But then I guess you're losing the academic focus of the IELTS. So topic I think would definitely.
That's question.
So I don't know that this is connected with research, but was there any, did you notice, I know a number of the students brought up not having vocabulary. Did you notice any patterns in vocabulary usage in it? Like, whether there, because Polynesian brings this up as part of vocabulary development, not necessarily fluency development. I was just curious if there were any interesting patterns picked up.
We didn't do that kind of analysis in this case, but we did in our discussions about how we might go forward with the research. That was one of the things that we came up on, like, would we get transcripts of what they'd done and then go more into the nitty-gritty of like, how frequency were words of this band or that band used. That's definitely like one way that we could take it forward, for sure.
Well, I think we're out of time.
Yeah, we have about time to thank everyone.